So in 2013, there was this highly anticipated cinematic masterpiece that hit theaters, right? And it was celebrated for basically exposing the absolute darkest, most depraved depths of Wall Street financial fraud.
Oh, yeah.
Audiences are just, watching in awe as billions are stolen and completely squandered on screen. But what almost nobody sitting in those theaters knew at the time.
Right, which is the craziest part.
Exactly. What they didn't know was that the millions of dollars paying to put that very fraud on the screen were actively being stolen from the taxpayers of Malaysia.
Just unbelievable.
Welcome to another deep dive. Today we are exploring the chaotic production, the really polarized reception, and the unprecedented real-world legacy of Martin Scorsese's The Wolf of Wall Street.
We really do have a fascinating roadmap ahead of us today. Our source material for this deep dive is the comprehensive Wikipedia article that details the film's entire life cycle. So we're basically looking at a text that chronicles how a movie about extreme, almost cartoonish greed eventually became a central player in an international corruption scandal, one that honestly perfectly mirrored its own script.
It really did. And the mission for this deep dive is to figure out how that staggering collision of art and reality actually happened. But before we get into the mechanics of global money laundering and Hollywood financing, we do have a mandatory disclaimer for you, the listener.
Yeah, this is important to lay out right up front.
Right. The source material we're discussing today touches on highly sensitive, politically charged events, specifically the Malaysian 1MDB government corruption scandal. And on top of that, the film itself contains very explicit depictions of extreme drug use, graphic sexuality, and massive financial crimes.
Lots of it.
Right. So we just want to be clear that we are impartially reporting the facts, the events, and the criticisms exactly as they're detailed in the source. We are not taking a political side, nor are we, endorsing any of the viewpoints, lifestyles, or illegal behaviors depicted in the film or the surrounding scandals.
Exactly. Our focus is strictly analytical. We're looking at the cultural footprint of the film, the business mechanics behind how it was made, and the controversy it generated, all strictly through the lens of the provided text.
Well said. So, with that established, I think the sheer disconnect surrounding this movie's legacy is probably the perfect place to start.
Oh, absolutely.
Because on one side of the ledger, you have 5 highly prestigious Academy Award nominations, right? Including Best Picture and Best Director.
Yeah, peak prestige cinema.
But then on the other side, the film literally set a Guinness World Record for the most profanity in a motion picture. I mean, you do not usually see distinguished Oscar nominee and most swear words ever recorded sharing the same Wikipedia page.
You really don't. But, that paradox is entirely by design. The boundary-pushing lengths that the production went to were necessary, at least in the filmmaker's eyes, to accurately capture the environment of Jordan Belfort's firm.
Right, Stratton Oakmont.
Yeah. The production philosophy seemed to be that you couldn't just simulate a chaotic environment. The production itself actually had to embrace a certain level of chaos for it to feel authentic on screen.
Which makes sense. I mean, we all know the basic Belfort story from the late 80s and 90s, right?
Yeah.
They're really aggressive pump and dump penny stock schemes, the army of ruthless brokers, the absolute destruction of working class savings accounts, and of course the whole Aunt Emma Swiss bank smuggling plot.
Right, and the massive Quaalude consumption.
Yeah.
The Lemon 714s?
Oh man, the Lemon 714s. But what the source reveals is how the frenetic, just manic energy of that fraud bled directly into the production of the movie.
Yeah, completely.
You have actors making these massive sacrifices just to be in the room. Like Leonardo DiCaprio, who championed the project and was a producer, takes home $10 million.
Pretty standard for him.
Right. But meanwhile, Jonah Hill, who was just desperate to work with Scorsese, agrees to the SAG-AFTRA minimum salary. He took $60,000 for a 7-month shoot.
Which is just, it illustrates the immense gravity a director like Scorsese has in Hollywood.
Yeah.
People will do anything to work with him.
Literally anything.
And Hill's commitment went way beyond his paycheck, too. The source details the sheer physical toll the production took on the cast. Because, the characters are using drugs in nearly every single scene.
Right, there's always something on the desk.
Exactly. So the prop department used crushed vitamin D powder as a stand-in for cocaine.
Which sounds harmless enough.
You'd think. But Hill snorted so much of this powder over the course of filming that he actually developed severe bronchitis.
Oh my God.
He had to be hospitalized for weeks.
Wait, really? Just from vitamin D?
Yeah, just the sheer volume of it getting into his lungs.
That is, I mean, that feels like a physical manifestation of the movie's core theme, doesn't it? It goes way beyond a typical method acting exercise.
It's like method acting gone rogue.
Exactly. They were literally infecting their own lungs, making themselves physically sick to accurately portray the metaphorical sickness of Wall Street greed.
That's a great way to put it.
But commitment to excess is just baked into the DNA of the footage. And, that extends to the script, too, which brings us back to that Guinness World Record we mentioned. 569 uses of the F word.
Yeah. And in a 180-minute movie, that averages out to 2.81 profanities per minute.
That is exhausting to even think about.
It is. And it comfortably beat the previous record holders, which ironically included Scorsese's own films like Casino and Goodfellas.
Of course it did.
But that extremity wasn't just a fun piece of trivia for movie nerds. It actually created massive logistical nightmares for international distribution.
Oh, I bet. Because different countries have vastly different censorship boards, right?
Exactly.
And trying to sanitize a movie where the profanity and the drug use are basically load-bearing pillars of the plot, I mean, that's nearly impossible.
Yeah, just look at the United Arab Emirates. The distributors there didn't just mute a few words. They physically chopped 45 minutes of footage out of the movie.
45 minutes. That's a quarter of the film.
Right. They removed the swearing, the drug use, the sex, the nudity. And as you'd expect, filmgoers were furious. They were complaining that the movie shouldn't have been released at all if they were just going to screen this butchered, incoherent highlight reel.
Well, yeah, I'd be mad too if I paid for a ticket to that. But, the ability to easily butcher the film like that actually ties into a massive behind-the-scenes technological shift that this movie spearheaded.
Oh, the digital shift.
Yeah. From an industry perspective, The Wolf of Wall Street basically marked the fatal blow to physical film distribution. Paramount Pictures made it their very first major American film to be released exclusively through digital distribution.
Wow.
They abandoned 35mm physical film prints entirely for theaters.
Which is a huge deal. And it explains a lot about the censorship process, too. Back in the day, physically cutting 45 minutes out of thousands of heavy reels of 35mm film.
They took them all around the globe.
Right. It was incredibly laborious and expensive. But with digital cinema packages, or DCPs, distributors could theoretically slice, mute, and re-edit the film with just a few keystrokes. It made localized censorship so much more efficient.
But this digital shift must have been absolutely devastating to Thelma Schoonmaker, Scorsese's legendary editor.
Oh, she was highly vocal about her disappointment.
Yeah.
Scorsese has historically been one of the film industry's loudest champions for the preservation of physical film stock.
Yeah, he loves physical film.
And they actually shot a significant portion of this movie on physical 35mm film to get a very specific visual texture.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So having the studio mandate a 100% digital theatrical release, it was a clear, undeniable signal that the digital era had won, and the traditional media was effectively dead in the water for mass distribution.
Man, that's kind of sad. But, the very method acting extremes and that uncompromising vision that made the film a masterpiece to critics, those are exactly the things that created a massive divide with regular audiences.
Yeah, there was definitely a split.
Because we have a movie that grosses $407 million worldwide. It's Scorsese's biggest box office hit ever. Critics are throwing around adjectives like Olympian. I think Richard Brody of The New Yorker used that word.
He did.
Yet when everyday audiences were surveyed via CinemaScore, the movie received a C grade.
Which is rough.
Yeah, in the world of mainstream theater polling, a C is essentially a failure. People were buying tickets in droves, but a huge portion of them walked out feeling actively alienated. Why do you think that is?
Well, the disparity between critics and general audiences usually comes down to narrative expectations.
Okay.
General audiences have been conditioned to expect a moral reckoning in stories about crime. In a classic corporate thriller, the villain eventually faces justice, the system course corrects, and the audience gets a nice sense of closure.
Right. The bad guy goes to jail in the end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But The Wolf of Wall Street denies the audience that comfort. The debauchery is just relentless for 3 hours, and the punishment Belfort ultimately receives, which was 22 months in a minimum security country club-style prison, It feels like a mere slap on the wrist.
The Los Angeles Times highlighted this perfectly. They suggested that the marketing drew in viewers expecting a traditional, moralistic, cautionary tale. But instead, they were trapped in an unapologetic 3-hour plunge into absolute depravity.
Yeah, trapped is probably how some of them felt.
Right. But the people most alienated by the film weren't just confused moviegoers. The loudest pushback came from the actual victims of Stratton Oakmont's fraud.
Oh, absolutely.
Joel M. Cohen, who was the real-life assistant U.S. attorney who prosecuted Belfer, publicly tore into the film. He argued that the movie essentially erased the thousands of working-class victims who had their life savings wiped out. And he said it simultaneously provided a multi-million-dollar advertisement for Belford's post-prison career.
And Cohen specifically pointed to the final scene of the film, where the real-life Jordan Belfort actually makes a cameo.
Oh, right. At the end?
Yeah, he's standing on stage introducing Leonardo DiCaprio's version of himself at a sales seminar. For the prosecutor who put him away, seeing the filmmaker give the actual criminal a hero's welcome in his own biopic, I mean, it was a profound insult to the victims.
I can completely understand that. And Cohen wasn't alone. Christina McDowell, whose father worked closely with Belfort and was a big part of the massive fraud, she wrote a scathing open letter to Scorsese and DiCaprio.
Yeah, she did not hold back.
Not at all. She accused them of exacerbating a national obsession with wealth and status and recklessly glorifying psychopathic behavior. Her argument was that by turning these guys into charismatic anti-heroes, the filmmakers were giving celebrity status to people who destroyed families, just completely ignoring the collateral damage.
It's a very valid criticism. And what's interesting is the subject of the film, Jordan Belfort himself, had his own complex reaction to the portrayal.
Did he like it?
Well, according to the source, he praised the film for accurately capturing the camaraderie and the sheer insanity of his firm's culture. He even claimed that the film toned down his drug use.
Toned it down?
Yeah. He stated he was consuming 22 different drugs by the end of his run. Far more than what was shown on screen.
I mean, the audacity of complaining that a 3-hour movie didn't have enough time to showcase your entire pharmaceutical portfolio is just staggering.
It really is.
But didn't he also complain that the movie oversimplified his actual financial crimes?
He did. He felt the blunt, cinematic depictions made it look like he was merely trying to rip people off from day one. He claimed his initial goal was actually helping build America through speculative stock investments.
Oh, please.
I know. But he felt the nuance of his financial strategies was lost in favor of the sensationalism.
Right, but let's be real, the nuance of the financial strategy isn't what audiences latched onto anyway. I want to look at a specific anecdote from the source material that really, I think, tests the boundaries of this movie's legacy.
Okay, let's hear it.
So, a journalist attended an advanced screening of the film at a theater located near the Goldman Sachs building in New York City.
Oh, wow.
Naturally, the audience was packed with finance workers. And the journalist reported that during a scene where Belfort, who was supposedly trying to stay sober at this point in the movie, he rips open a couch cushion in a panic and discovers a hidden stash of cocaine. The audience erupted into cheers.
So they actively cheered for the protagonist's relapse into addiction.
Yes, and to me, if a theater full of finance brokers is cheering for the villain's most destructive, pathetic moments, the movie has failed as a satire. Like, it stopped being a cautionary tale and accidentally became an instructional video for the exact people it was supposed to be criticizing, don't you think?
Honestly, I push back on that interpretation entirely.
Really?
Because it is not Martin Scorsese's job to babysit the moral compass of Wall Street brokers. The purpose of the film is to hold up a mirror to a culture that worships money and excess without consequence. If the audience cheers for the cocaine, that is an indictment of the audience, not the director.
A really good point.
Right. The film basically serves as a Rorschach test for greed. The fact that they cheered is the ultimate proof that Scorsese's depiction of their culture was 100% accurate.
Okay, that is a fascinating defense. If the reflection is ugly, don't blame the mirror. I like that. But, this entire debate over whether the movie glorified stolen money gets completely eclipsed by a much darker, factual reality detailed in our source.
Yes, this is where things get really crazy.
The movie was literally, tangibly funded by stolen money. It is like finding out an acclaimed documentary exposing the horrors of the cartel was quietly financed by El Chapo.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And this development breaks the story entirely out of the entertainment section and lands it straight on the front pages of global finance and geopolitical news.
Right.
We mentioned earlier that major Hollywood studios initially balked at the script, because of the R rating and the extreme content.
Mm.
The project was essentially dead in the water. That is, until an independent company called Red Granite Pictures swooped in. They offered full financing and absolutely zero content restrictions.
Which at the time made them look like the visionary saviors of cinema, right? Protecting the auteur director from the cowardly studio system.
Exactly.
But then, in 2015, investigations by the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission and subsequently the United States Department of Justice revealed that Red Granite was deeply entangled in the 1MDB scandal.
Right. And to understand the gravity of this, we need to look at what 1MDB actually was. One Malaysia Development Berhad was a sovereign wealth fund. It was a state-run investment vehicle purportedly designed to drive strategic, long-term economic development and infrastructure projects within Malaysia.
So it was meant to benefit the public.
Exactly. Instead, billions of dollars were systematically siphoned out of this fund by corrupt officials and international financiers. They turned it into a massive global slush fund.
So how does money meant for power plants and roads in Malaysia end up paying for crushed vitamin D powder on a Hollywood movie set?
Well, the source traces the connection directly to one of the film's producers, a man named Riza Aziz. Aziz just happened to be the stepson of the then Malaysian Prime Minister, Najib Razak.
Oh, what a coincidence.
Right. And the mechanism of the fraud relied on an elaborate network of shell companies. The DOJ alleged that Aziz used millions of dollars stolen directly from the 1MDB fund to finance his production company, Red Granite Pictures.
It's just wild.
And court filings detailed how a fugitive businessman named Jiwo Lo, who is considered the central mastermind of the 1MDB fraud, he actually facilitated these transfers. He even provided the film's producers with a massive $9 million advance just to get the project moving.
And the sheer brazenness of it is unbelievable. Jiwo Lo actually receives a special thanks in the final credits of the movie.
Hiding in plain sight.
Exactly. You have a 3-hour cinematic epic warning the public about the dangers of unchecked financial fraud. And the entire time, the production itself is being used as a real-life vessel to launder hundreds of millions of dollars of stolen sovereign wealth.
It's insane. And the consequences were severe, though complex. The U.S. Department of Justice filed civil forfeiture complaints, naming the film's rights and future profits as part of the illicit assets to be seized.
Wow, so they went after the movie's money directly.
Oh, yeah. Ultimately, Red Granite Pictures reached an agreement to pay a $60 million settlement to the United States government.
$60 million.
Yeah. However, it's crucial to note that they agreed to this settlement without making any official admission of wrongdoing or liability.
Of course.
Right. And this settlement was just one piece of a massive multinational effort by the DOJ to seize roughly $1.7 billion in assets. We're talking yachts, real estate, art, all allegedly purchased with embezzled 1MDB funds.
It's just, when you zoom out and look at the entire life cycle of this movie, the layers of irony are almost too thick to process. You have a narrative about a boiler room scammer stealing from working class Americans, right? And it's financed by a geopolitical scam allegedly stealing from the citizens of Malaysia.
Like a Matryoshka doll of fraud.
Seriously. And it really forces you to examine the entire machinery of the entertainment industry. The film needed a massive injection of capital to expose corruption on screen. And because traditional regulated studios wouldn't touch it, the filmmakers had to rely on a completely opaque funding source.
Yeah.
It demonstrates how easily illicit money can wash itself clean simply by standing next to Hollywood glamour.
Absolutely. The victims of Stratton Oakmont were largely left out of the cinematic narrative, and the victims of the 1MDB scandal, the Malaysian public, unwittingly bankrolled the entertainment of millions.
Unbelievable.
Meanwhile, the people who perpetrated the crimes, and allegedly those who financed the film about the crimes, they just continue to operate in elite circles of high finance and prestige.
Which brings us to the broader implications for the media we consume every single day.
Yeah.
I want you, the listener, to really reflect on this the next time you browse a streaming service, because we are currently living in an absolute golden age of true crime podcasts, documentaries, and glossy biopics about scammers.
Oh, for sure. It's everywhere.
We have a collective cultural obsession with watching fraudsters operate. But this deep dive really exposes how incredibly thin the line is between exposing a crime to the public, being entertained by that crime, and actively profiting from it. At what point does a cautionary tale just become another component of the grift?
I mean, that is the defining tension of the true crime genre. The desire to understand the mechanics of fraud often inadvertently provides a platform that glamorizes the lifestyle of the fraudster.
So true. And we want to leave you with one final, highly provocative detail from the source material, just a single fact that perfectly encapsulates the sheer, unadulterated absurdity of this entire saga.
Oh, this is the best part.
When the global news broke about the 1MDB scandal and the allegations that illicit funds were used to finance the movie, Jordan Belfort, the actual Wolf of Wall Street, filed a lawsuit against Red Granite Pictures for $300 million.
$300 million.
Yeah.
He sued the production company to void his original life rights deal.
And do you know his legal argument? He claimed he never would have sold his life rights to them if he had known the movie was being financed by fraudulent illegal money.
You can't make it up.
Just let the hypocrisy of that sink in. A convicted fraudster whose entire public persona and wealth were built on ripping people off and laundering money attempted to sue Hollywood producers for fraud, claiming the ultimate moral high ground because he felt their money was too dirty.
It is the ultimate paradox. The subject of the satire attempting to out-satirize the film itself.
The scammer suing the scammers for scamming his scam story. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the stories you watch, look closely at where they come from, and always ask who is paying for them. Until next time.